all these things. Because if a law enforcement officer ignores minor laws, such as speeding, such as double parking, such as, vandalism, then what is society to expect when the crime is ratcheted up a couple notches to a minor assault? Is a minor assault something that we could ignore? And so I got into a very deep philosophical conversation with a Swedish reporter of asking her question, where does enforcement begin and anarchy end? And she walked away, I think, with a much different perspective than when she arrived, because I said, we have to write these tickets, because if I don't write these tickets, I can't legally tow this car. If I can't tow this car, then we're not going to have the roadway open for an ambulance coming down the road. And so it's if someone says we need to defund the police and just have unarmed community people out breaking up fights, I think the pendulum will swing the other way, and then there will be a time that a community peacekeeper, an unarmed peacekeeper, gets injured or, God forbid, killed, and people are going to say, what were we thinking? Why don't we have trained people who are able to defend the public against armed bad guys? Why aren't they out here able to turn on their license sirens to get here as quick as possible and protect my community? And that, as we started this conversation talking about law enforcement has accepted this mega responsibility of super arming themselves and super tools to protect us and so forth, there could be a happy medium, and that's going to depend on the community standard. And what is a community standard?
That you said something, it really reframed something I was pretty excited about and happy about. So during the 4th of July, in my neighborhood, which last year, it was just, people light off sparklers and some little light things. This year, it was as though each little neighborhood had their own pyrotechnics, in like crazy light show. So all around me were huge amounts of fireworks, stuff that there is no possible way it's legal unless you have a license. But nobody was afraid that the police were going to stop by and be like, hey, it's past 10 o'clock, da, da, da. And I thought, hey, what a great representation that people still believe in America and its freedom. And it may mean that, right? But there is a flip side to that I had not considered as partially dangerous, which is that is people saying they're not going to send the cops here for me because they didn't send the cops in for burning down that building. So if I take this infraction, nothing's going to happen. And if I extend this metaphor all the way out, I know you and I have spoken about this before, but when I lived in Kenya, they did not have a police force. Or if they did, you wanted to stay as far away from them as possible. So what would happen was if somebody ended up having something stolen from them, a thief would come out, then you could point at that thief and you could say, Mwezi, 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 which means thief. As soon as somebody gets pointed out as a thief, people come out of the woodwork, running out of stores, running up from the street. They capture that person and they beat them to death. And I saw that happen. And when you see something like that happen, you realize like, whoa, you do not want the emotion of the crowd to be the way that we met out justice. But that sounds like the direction you head in if you extend out so far the thing that you're talking about. If you don't handle littering, if you don't handle parked cars.
Well, vigilantism certainly is something that our country is founded on vigilantism. Let's understand that our forefathers were vigilantes against Britain. We can accept that, and it's a true statement. But on the other hand, there comes a time that if you're paying taxes, there's a want and desire for you to have someone to be the enforcer. And if every day a black Camaro speeds by your house at 100 miles an hour and you call law enforcement, you expect law enforcement to respond and watch for that black Camaro and to stop them and give them a ticket and make sure that your road is safe again. I mean, it's simple. Public safety is all it is. But you bring up a really good point on Kenya, and I want to talk about police officer salaries. One of the things, Vance, that if you are in the Western world, and you're from a country which is progressive, and you don't have to worry about law enforcement officers on the take or being bribed and so forth, I will tell you that that means that law enforcement officers are paid a fair salary. I'm not talking about, that they're making $250,000 a year. That's not my point. My point is they're made a salary which is fair, and it's equal to the threat that they're assuming as their role. Because if you have a law enforcement officer who's working for minimum wage, you certainly have increased the likelihood of them accepting a bribe. And I'm not saying that all law enforcement officers on minimum wage are taking a bribe. That's not what I'm saying at all.
But you put them in that position to make it happen, right? The kidogo. Give me just a little something to make it easier for me to get by, to be able to take my wife out, to be able to buy a suit, that kind of thing.
Vance, one time in my 35-year career, I had a guy put a $100 bill behind his driver's license when I stopped him, and he gave me his driver's license. And after I got back from the car and writing him a ticket, and believe me, that was all the encouragement I needed, because I was going to give him a warning, but that was all the encouragement I needed to give him a ticket. I gave him his ticket and 2 halves of a $100 bill that I'd torn in half.
That's a great answer.
That's what I did, and basically no words were said about the $100 bill. He handed it to me. I wrote him a ticket. I ripped it in half, and I gave it back to him. And could I have taken him to jail for bribing and so forth? Yeah, I guess I could have. I didn't want to do that, but I certainly wanted to tell him that I don't know how many times in your life this has worked, but this is one time that it's not going to work, and I certainly don't appreciate you thinking that my integrity is worth $100. So. When you see law enforcement officers paid a very low salary, you're certainly increasing the ability and the thought process of them realizing, gosh, I have to pay rent next week, or gosh, my kid needs braces. And I've had a very good friend of mine who's currently in state prison right now, and he was arrested for taking money from drunk Hispanics that he was working at night, and he was rightfully caught. And while I still say he's a friend of mine, I'm not going to justify anything he did. And I've told him many, many times what he did certainly tarnished my badge as much as it did his.
Thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you're interested in the subjects that we're talking about, or the idea of how do you get better at communications, you may want to consider joining the Articulate Ventures Network. There, listeners like you can meet other listeners from all over the world. You can put up talks that you've given to ask for feedback and ways to improve, and you can even take courses that'll help you become a tangibly better communicator. That's the Articulate Ventures Network with the link below.